Hello and welcome to my first in-person video. Post the Memorization album, Hershey Bell, who is a very strong Season 3 supporter, asked me if I would do a music production video covering how I do my synths. So I decided to track Thunderclouds, which appears on Alexa Pour Me a Gin, and then when I realised at the end there aren't actually any synths on this then became an overview of my current music production workflow, and I hope you enjoy it. Whenever I make an album, I always like to have a journey. So I'll plot out each of the tracks and how I want the journey to go with some working titles and just a very loose description that I can give to Jill to start with the lyrics. I set up a DAW template so that I've got some consistency throughout the whole album, but I can always add instruments or extra tracks as we go along. I have Scalar, which I'll talk about later, and for the drum and percussion I use Groove Agent, which is part of Cubase, a soft drum, M-Drummer from Melda Productions, and some Native Instruments percussion. For the bass I use Easy Bass, a Sine for the sub, and a Retrolog, which is part of Cubase. Some keys from Native Instruments. Synths, my main one is Omnisphere. I use some Contact instruments and some from Piano Book as well. The guitars are virtual instruments, mainly from Native Instruments and from Omnisphere, plus some Spitfire Audio Labs. Orchestra, mainly from Spitfire Audio and Piano Book. Sound effects, as I go along, but also from a CD that I made. Choirs, mainly from Piano Book and Native Instruments. Vocal tracks ready to record, and everything routed to a group so that I can do a rough mix as I go along. And set up some basic effects, some delays and reverbs. So looking at the track overview, I had Calm After or The Storm, and Jill came up with the lyrics, and I always ask her to give me a mood. In this case it was dark, moody, atmospheric, calm after the storm. So I need to select a key, minor, major or mode, so it was hinting at minor, and I use like a reference sheet, and I'll post it in the description below a link, and the one that seemed to fit it for me was D minor. So I'll then sit at the piano and just go through the scale. I'll then make a note of Steph, who was the vocalist in this case, just to see what her sweet spot area was and the whole of her vocal range, so I could then write a melody that fitted in with that. Now looking back at the lyric sheet, I made a note that maybe the final verse should be in a major key, but on closer look of the lyrics I decided that maybe that wasn't necessarily the best idea. Freshness fills the pathway, water pools glint and shine, the omen of dark storms have vanished for today. Now it was the for today was the key for me, that the problem, whatever it is, hasn't gone away, so I thought I'd keep it in a minor key, but just lift it a few semitones to show you that at least something has improved. Next thing is to choose the tempo, and I've got an app on my phone where I just simply tap what I feel is the right amount and just use whatever the average is. And then I'll source some samples to help set the mood, and currently I use Freesound, and I found a particularly good thunderstorm file. Now, I'm not a very good piano player, in fact I'm pretty poor, so I could work out the chords on the piano, but it would take me absolutely ages. So I currently use Scalar 2, which is a wonderful plugin. And the first thing you do is play in the melody that we just heard on the piano, and then it will give us some choices of what scales we can possibly use. Now, we already decided that D minor was the one, and you can see that it's there. So we click on that, and that will give us then the triads for the scale of D minor. And what I do then is I just simply do what sounds best as the melody's playing and drop them in to my pattern sequence. And then once they're all in, I can then just trigger each one from a single note and listen. Once I'm happy with the chords, I'll then do some sound design, and for the last couple of albums I've taken the root chord of the key that I'm writing in and then trying to make an interesting pad sound from that. So in this case I went to Piano Book and looked for something interesting, and I came across this music box, and it sounds like this. On the sound design track I've got some sound effects. The first one is spaced out, which is using multiple echoes and then a reverb as well. And for some time I've had a reverb called Adaptiverb by Synaptic, which produces some very interesting reverb sounds. But the useful thing is that it's got a freeze function as well, so that you can use that. Once I've recorded that sound, I'll then put it through Pulse Stretch, which is a plugin that some of you may be familiar with. I don't use this version anymore because I find it a bit too complex. I use the one in Audacity. And then once I stretch it 8 times and play it with the original piano and tune, it sounds like this. Now that sounded great, but when you use Pulse Stretch, you get some really interesting effects when you actually get a slight change in notes. And the following section is what caught my ear and used it for the intro and breakdown. Now, one of the key things for me in the way I write music is I like to have a chord track. Now, I can sort of import the chords from Scalar, but the voice leading I don't find particularly good in the current version, and voice leading is maybe something for a separate discussion. But I find Cubase does it really well. So I'll put in the chords and the melody and separate them out onto 2 separate tracks. Once I've done that, I can then just highlight the chord track, and then in Cubase I can select it to extract MIDI from the chords, and you can see there on the top I've got all the chords. but more importantly, when I use them to drag and drop onto other tracks, I get very good voice leading. So then it's a case of adding parts to make a basic arrangement, like the chorus, verse and instrumental. But in this case I've just called them A, B and C with a little fill at D. I've changed a few chime signatures. Scalar's no longer part of the process at this point. I did also record a lot of drums, but they're all muted at the moment, but I did go on to actually use them in the final song. So just walking through the track, we've got the drums, bass, bit of keys, some piano book or labs, guitar, a little bit of orchestral stuff, and also quite a lot of sound effects. And it sounds like this at the moment. So once I've come up with the basic arrangement, what I can then do on the arranger track is go into a little more detail and experiment with how many times I play the verse, whether it's part of an intro, and really just experiment, listen, experiment, listen, just keep going through that cycle. I also get a good idea of how long the song's likely to last as well with any particular current arrangement. And then you can flatten it, but before I do that though, there's one key part of the process, particularly when it's a song. I'll involve Jill to have a listen through. She's got a very good pair of ears and she'll often say, oh, could you do this, could you do that, or yeah, that works. Once I've got the seal of approval and I've flattened it out, I'll rename each section into their normal terminology, intro, verse, etc. Then it's just a case of going through each section, listening, finding out what needs muting, what needs adding, and I'll keep doing that through each of the sections until I feel it's ready for the vocals. Once we've reached that stage, I'll make a demo mix, send it off to Steph in this case so she can do some practice, and then when she's happy we'll do a recording session.
Thunder clouds rolling out, thunder clouds rolling out.
Well done, lass.
Hey!
Let's just double check. We know there's
There was a little
glitch
where I went to go into overhead.
Now when it comes to tuning vocals, I don't like to run through a plugin in real time. I like to do it manually. So I'll open up the audio in my audio editor. And unfortunately the screen recording didn't record the vocals on this one, so I do apologise. But hopefully this will be clear. So I listen through, listen by ear, but I also use a MIDI track reference, which is the vocal guide for Steph when I sent the demo mix. And I can also check that with my ears and with the colour, and then move if necessary, so that they match into the right pitch. And as you can see on the purple there, it's got a real pitch down. So I'll just mark it, pull it down gently, listen to make sure it's natural. And just keep listening to each note in turn until I'm happy. And hopefully not much tweaking to be done. When I'm ready to mix, I'll export the tracks to audio. I do that for archiving as well as committing. I'll open up a new Cubase session because I feel it changes the mindset now from composing to mixing. I'll open a mix template and import the audio tracks. I mean, the great thing about using a mix template is that once it's tweaked and set up, it then becomes very easy to get all the tracks in. So you can see here, I've already imported some drum tracks. So I'll show you one that we're about to import, which is the flute violin. So open up the section, which is the woodwinds long. You just drag it down. It'll automatically color code. I just need to make it slightly wider. And then for each of the tracks, what I'm required to do for this template is, in order to meet the right levels for the plugins, is just increase the gain so that the waveform is about 50%, which is about there. I think most of us probably do this, but it's just such a great way of producing a little checklist, and hopefully it tries to stop you over mixing. For the last 5 Season 3 albums, I've sent them off to Ben Holmes to master them, because it's wonderful to have a second pair of ears who can spot things that you probably haven't seen because of the wood from the trees. And I master all his songs, and it works brilliantly well. So it's time to take a rest from my dulcet tones and let the music talk as we go through the final mix walkthrough.
To set my mood, small birds head to the nest, dark leaves mimic black shrouds, thunder clouds rolling in, thunder clouds rolling in. flashlight. Overhead a loud boom, spiky crackle of air, thunder clouds rolling out, thunder clouds rolling out. Freshness fills the pathway, water pools glint and shine. The omen of dark storms have vanished for today. Thunder clouds roll away. Thunder clouds roll away.
Well, I hope you found that interesting for my music production overview, and that obviously is my current production for 2021, which is evolving over the years, so no doubt will change in the future. If you liked it, please give me a like, and any comments, good or bad, please put them in the comments below. And also in the comments if you've got any requests for future topics that you might find interesting, because it does take quite a while to put these videos together, but if there is enough interest then I'm more than happy to make some more. So thanks for watching.